everyone, and welcome to Time and Money Mastery. We are your co-hosts. I'm Indiana.
And I'm Sam. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on any of our episodes. Now, let's get started.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Time and Money Mastery. Today you have your co-host, which is me, Indiana, and we are joined by an awesome guest who is going to introduce herself.
Hey guys, it's Kirsty from Money Made Simple. You may have heard about my podcast as well, but basically our podcast aims to improve the financial literacy of Australian millennials.
Yes, and I love it. I've been listening to your podcast for ages, and I love how straight to the point and direct it is. There's no fluff. It's just, this is the topic and let's talk about it. Whereas I'm a bit more of a rambler. So Money Made Simple is really good if you just want the hard facts, quick and fast. I love it. So tell me a little bit about yourself, your age, what do you do, your life situation, you're getting married soon. Tell me all about it.
Yes, so I'm 27. I think if you asked me 10 years ago, where I'd be when I was 27, I probably would give you a very different answer to what I'm doing today. But I work as a treasury analyst, and all of your listeners are going to be like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, even I'm like, what?
Yeah, I don't even think many of my close friends even know what I do, to be honest. A couple of them do. But basically, I look after, and it's a listed company that I work for, so they have shares on the stock exchange. So I work for them, and basically we manage the balance sheet. So the liquidity of the company, making sure that there's enough cash flow to pay out and to what we do when we receive the funds. So decision making around investing or paying down debt, very similar to how you would do in a personal situation, just with a lot more zeros on the end of it. And yeah, I've been doing that for about 5 years now. I've worked for a couple of companies. I worked for a gambling company, Tats Group, who got taken over. And then I worked at Brisbane Airport. So yeah, I've been doing that role for a while. I went to uni. I did a dual degree in business and information systems. And I'm almost finished my master's in finance. Thank the Lord for that, because it's taken me a very long time and it's very time consuming. So, but
yeah, and it's expensive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So the course that I'm doing is it's 6 subjects a year. So you do 6 subjects, 6 weeks a subject, and it's 3,200 a subject.
Oh my goodness.
So whilst you can, utilize it as a self-education expense when you do your tax, the tax that you get back does not pay for the course at all, but it is good for improving my employment prospects in the future. And also it does give you the ability to network with others who are in the same industry, and also to learn a few things that maybe you don't learn on the job.
Yeah, amazing. So I had a couple of thoughts while you were saying that. And so your goal is to stay in employment long term?
Yeah, it's a funny question. I love my job. So yes, I probably do want to stay in full-time employment by a listed company preferably. But I guess in this, if I'm thinking a longer timeline, I wouldn't mind doing a part-time working for myself and a part-time working hopefully as a CFO if I can get there one day. But yeah, I've always loved my job, and I love going to work and interacting with different people. Like when we're in lockdown, and I know 100% feel for everybody else around the world, and those in Melbourne too, because the lockdowns in Brisbane were nowhere near as bad as anywhere else, to be honest. But
basically non-existent. We're very blessed.
Yeah, so we were really only working from home for about a month and a half at maximum. But even then, just not having the physical interaction with people and being stuck in this space all the time, it really was not good for my mental health and well-being. So I think if I work for myself, I'm probably going to go into that trap if I do work for myself full time. So I think if I can find the right balance, then yeah, that's definitely something that I would look forward to doing.
Yeah, balance is It's a tricky one, and I think it's cool because it looks so different to everyone. Like the reason I try to tread carefully around that question is, for me, I'm not made for the 9 to 5. I'm not made for an office job. It just doesn't sit with me. Every job I've had, I've never been able to last more than 6 or 12 months because I'm way too antsy. But I know for a lot of people, it does like really make them happy. So it's pretty cool to see like different perspectives. And I guess it comes with that financial security. So I'm assuming that you've put yourself through uni and your masters and everything. How's that been like? Because it's quite expensive. Do you pay up front? Do you defer it? Is that even an option?
Yeah, so my undergrad, I was fortunate enough for the last year, my employer paid for the last year. So I do have HECS for the first couple of years that I mucked around and changed degrees a couple of times. And yeah, so that I paid some of that up front. These were back in the days when you could pay up front and get a discount. Now that I've said that, they've actually brought it back in.
Oh, really?
So for anybody looking to pay upfront for their HECS, you can pay upfront and get a discount again. So that's just recently come back.
Is it worthwhile? Is it like what percentage is
that?
Yeah,
I think it might be like 5 or 10%. Don't take my word for it, but
yeah,
definitely have a look at that. My master's is self-funded to a degree. My previous employer did pay for 50% as they deemed that it was 50% relevant to my role. So yes, whilst I've been really fortunate in that they've paid for some of it, it's still very expensive to put yourself through it. So yes, I do have a HECS debt. To be honest, I probably couldn't tell you the balance. I think it's about 40K. I'm one of those people that it comes out of my pay and it's got the lowest interest rate of anything because it's indexed with CPI. So I don't care about it. It's there. It comes out of my pay. Like it just happens. And when it's paid off, that's great. I get like little pay rise. So that's going to be fun. But yeah, for me, like the money side of it, I don't worry about it at all because I know that I'm improving my own education, which is something that I think people need to focus on. And yeah, it comes out of my pay, so it's taken care of. And when I do my tax, I pay a big chunk of it off, and then the next year the same thing happens. So
so that's interesting. So when you get your tax return, you choose to make like a voluntary repayment from that?
No, so when you complete your tax return or when you get paid, a portion of your pay gets taxed as HECS help repayment. And what happens is that doesn't actually get applied to your HECS loan until you complete your tax return for that financial year. So let's just say this whole financial year, I've been making payments out of my pay. It's compulsory. If you fill out a tax declaration form when you start with your employer and tick the box that says you have a HECS debt, they will take out the percentage required based on the pay that they pay you. And then at the end of the year, when you do your tax, they take your taxable income, calculate how much you should have paid of HECS, and then apply that number to your HECS loan.
Okay.
So I don't have to pay anything up front or set up transfers to the account. The ATO deals with all of that through the taxation system.
Okay. See, I've never noticed that. My HECS just comes out and I've just kind of never really paid much attention to where it's coming from or where it sits. So you're saying that, that $30 or $50 that comes out each week, that's actually not going straight to the debt until tax time?
Yeah, that's right. So you can actually, if you tell your employer that you don't have a HECS debt, they'll pay you your normal amount and you can transfer that money to your help loan. Now, I wouldn't recommend that, mainly because some people get sucked in and then the whole year they're like, oh, it's just $50 a week. Like I'll use it this week, but I'll pay it next week. And then you get to tax time and you're like, oh my God, I owe like $5,000. So I think the only reason why I would do that in that instance is if I knew that I was going to be paying out my loan balance prior to the 30 June deadline. So if I knew I had like $500 left to pay, I would tell my employer that I didn't have a HECS loan and then pay that money out of my pay. Because if you don't do that, you're stuck the whole financial year paying that amount out of your pay when, you'll get it back at tax time, but it's not.
Yeah, what a pain. Yeah.
Exactly.
I wish I only had $500 left. Oh my goodness.
Oh God, me too.
I think mine is like 38,000, and I do make like the compulsory repayments. But yeah, like you said, at the moment, it is like my lowest debt. And I think a common misconception is that it's not taxed. And yes, while it's not like traditionally taxed, it does receive that indexation, which, means it is increasing every year. So it is something to keep in the back of your mind. I know a lot of people are like, oh, whatever, I'll just ignore it forever. But in the meantime, it is accumulating. So it is something you want to address eventually. But yeah, it's probably not my first priority either. In terms of debt, like, do you have any other debts?
Yep, I have a mortgage, so I'm not going to be getting rid of that one soon.
Oh, that's awesome.
No, I'm not getting rid of it.
Oh, you're not getting rid of it. Okay, not great. Yeah, that's not great.
No, not great. I mean, it's an essential asset for me, so I'm happy to pay. So I've bought an apartment off the plan when I was 22 and moved in when I was 24. So I've been in here for 3 years almost. And I bought that by myself, but obviously my fiance and I live in the apartment together. So yeah, that's the only debt that is attached to my name, which I'm really proud of. Like, if you had asked me that question 5 years ago, I would have given you a totally different story, struggling to stop paying for things, like using Afterpay to pay for everything. That was a massive trap. I actually had a discussion with somebody yesterday on Instagram about Afterpay, and they were saying that basically just asked what I noticed that some of the content that you release says that Afterpay is not good, but I've heard the opposite. So can you just explain to me why you don't like it? And I'm just talking from personal experience. I know how easy it is to fall into the trap of not having enough money for the week, and then you go and buy something and pay it off later, and then 2 weeks later your pay comes in and a portion of that has to go to that purchase you made 2 weeks ago. So it's just I'm just made the point to this person that it's so hard to fall into the trap. It's good to use if you feel that you can budget effectively and it's not going to influence your cash flow that much. But I'm one of these people now that, my annual car insurance bill comes in, I pay it annually. I don't pay 6 months anymore. I'm so proud of being able to, pay for things annually. Like home insurance, I was like, yep, I can pay for that annually. Health insurance, maybe not, because it's very expensive. But yeah, there's all the bills that you get where they ask you if you can pay it weekly or fortnightly. I'm always, I want to pay it annually now. So I'm really happy to be in that position and really fortunate to be in that position. But yeah, if you had asked me 5 years ago, it would have definitely been a different answer.
I completely agree with the Afterpay thing. And I think you're right. Like, some people will come for you, but once you really understand like the concept behind it, it's really not healthy. It's encouraging you to spend money that you don't have. And that's a really easy cycle to fall into, because you're spending money that you don't have in the future. So literally, like what you said, like, okay, I buy a dress for $200 today. And what tends to happen is I forget about it because I get the item straight away. But then, every 2 weeks I've got to pay for that item. So I'm not accounting for it. And then I find myself falling further and further behind with my goals because I forgot about that dress that I probably only wore one time really anyway. So I have also stopped using Afterpay. I'll use it on a very rare occasion just for cash flow purposes, but I will always pay it down early, and I will never, ever, ever pay overdue fees because it's just a rort. Have you seen, I don't know exactly what they're called, but it's like this new financial product that's coming out where basically you can access your salary before you actually get paid. Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
So there's a company called MyPay Now, which you could be talking about, but CBA are actually also endorsing this.
Yeah. And I think like other big banks are doing it too. And I'm just like, what are you doing?
Yeah. And the problem is that they're greedy, right? So they're always going to want their profit, and they see Afterpay performing so well that they want a piece of the pie. And CommBank also already had a a percentage of Klarna, which essentially is
Yeah.
Afterpay. It's just a different brand. But yeah, this accessing your pay early is disgusting.
Yeah.
It is 100% endorsing stealing from your future income behavior. And oh my God, it's gonna, it's not good.
If you guys could see us right now, we're both like shaking our head in frustration because we're just like, no, what are these guys doing? And sadly, it does come down to, they're just being greedy. And I think you guys need to keep that in mind is, oh yeah, that sounds really awesome. Like, I'm short a few $100 and I don't get paid till next Wednesday. Oh, I'll just, use my pay now, or, another brand where I get my salary ahead of time. But what you've got to remember is that you're basically indebting yourself. Like, you have to pay a huge interest on that amount firstly, plus they will usually charge you a set fee for taking that. So there's $50 gone, then you're paying interest. And then what's going to happen is when you do finally get paid, you've already spent that money. And then you've got to wait another week or another fortnight or another month till you get paid. And then see how you're stuck in that cycle of like never having enough money, always running short. It's just, it's kind of scary. And it's why I would never, ever, A, use those kind of platforms, or B, support them, because I think they're really, really missing the mark.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
So I kind of want to know, like, do you have any major money regrets?
Oh yeah, I have heaps. That's why I started the podcast.
Yeah, tell me about a couple.
So which one? I'll just pick one because I'm not going to blab on about all the things that I did wrong. But I think the biggest one for me was I was studying full-time and working full-time. And when I got my first full-time job, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and reward myself and go and buy a brand new car. And I went and bought a top of the line Hyundai, which everyone's like, ugh, Hyundai, like probably cost you 20 grand. Actually, no, my car cost almost $40,000. And it's a sports car.
Oh my goodness, for a Hyundai.
Yeah, I know. Clearly didn't have my good thinking hat on at that point in time, but I was like, yep, this is going to be a great reward for me. I've finally got my first full-time job. I'm getting paid, I don't know, probably double what I was getting paid when I was working at Macca's. But it was the worst decision ever. It was 5-year finance. I think it was fixed rate. And it was it was a secured loan, so you couldn't pay it out early. If you wanted to pay it out early, you had to pay all the lost interest costs.
Yeah.
Like I didn't look at anything. I just was so desperate to buy this car that I just did anything that I could to get it. And like, I still have it now, and I'm going to keep it basically now until it dies, because that was a really expensive purchase for me. And I mean, even now the used car market is doing pretty well, but I mean, I would probably maybe get 20 grand for it now. So yeah, that's 20 grand gone in what, six or 7 years that I've had it. So
yeah. And if I'm honest, like I think you would get less than that because I don't know if you know, but I work in car dealerships, and like pretty much like after 3 years, it's lost 50%. So I think, except that, what you did say about the car market at the moment, the used cars are pretty high. So you might be in better shape. But yeah, unfortunately, cars are just such a bad purchase. Like they're just shocking unless you can buy them outright. They're pretty much losing you money and hemorrhaging you. But I was similar. I bought a car when I was fresh 19, and same deal. First full-time job, I was like, I can cover these repayments, no worries, because they just show you the minimum, right? And they don't tell you how much interest you're going to be paying and, how much is going to be left. I had a balloon. So I had an 11 grand balloon at the end of my 4-year lease. And so basically I'd spent 4 years paying it off, and I still owed half of what the car was worth. And the car was I think I had 11 grand left, and the car was only worth like 12. So it was wild. And now I pay it off faster. Like I still have that car, and I make extra repayments, but it's 5 years, well, 4.5 years later, and I'm still repaying that same car, and I've still got 5.5 grand left. Like it's just such a poor decision. And I think it's one of those things you have to be so careful about, and like really do your research. So Kirsty, a question that I like to ask people is like, why do you care about money? Like, I feel like we often get kind of stereotyped, and I don't know, people always say to me, like, oh, why are you so obsessed with money? Like, and I'm like, I'm not obsessed with money. I'm really obsessed with like the freedom and the choice that it comes with, but that's just me. Like, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think like this sort of thinking about your future and not having to rely on anybody else and not having to go to work Monday to Friday to go and work for somebody else is something that I want in my life. I don't want to have to rely on a pension or my super as a retirement. I don't even think the pension will exist when we retire, to be honest, mainly because the superannuation system will have been in place for long enough. So, yeah, I think it's just the not having this big cloud over my head, worrying about, where my next repayments are going to come from. And, you know, yeah, I don't know. I just want to
Security.
feel, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's that whole feeling like it's okay. Like money is a massive cause of stress for a lot of people. And I'm quite fortunate in that because I spend so much time making sure that I budget effectively and live within my means, that I never have to encounter that stress because, I know exactly where everything is. I have money over for a rainy day if something bad does happen. And yeah, I don't have to worry.
Yeah. I found it interesting though that you said, money means you don't have to work Monday to Friday, but you said you're really happy in your job and working Monday to Friday. So it seems like they're kind of conflicting.
Yeah, I think for me, like, as I said, I love my job. So it doesn't really feel like I'm going to work so that I can afford the life that I want to live. Yeah, I think going to work for me is more than coming home every day and, going to work 9 to 5, coming home and getting paid. It's much more than that for me. I do work much longer hours than that. I quite often don't leave after 8 hours. We'll spend more time there just because I really enjoy the development that it gives me, the people that are there, and all the different experiences that I get to learn from in that role. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I guess it's like the choice of like if one day you were to feel like it didn't suit you anymore or, it doesn't align with you, you'd be financially secure enough to be like, okay, it's time to move on.
yeah, exactly. And I think, in a couple of years, I'm hoping to have a family and I'm not going to worry that, I may not be returning to work for X amount of months or years, or when I do return, I don't have to go back on a full-time basis. I think that's probably where the not requiring to go to work Monday to Friday probably stems from.
Yeah, awesome. And like on that topic, because I'm 25 and you're only 2 years older than me, but I don't even have a partner or anything. So kids are definitely not on the mind. But you're getting married, you're thinking about family soon. Like, what are you doing to like, kind of account for that or buffer it? Like, because that's a big expense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, just to give you some context, private health insurance, and you don't have to have private health insurance for pregnancy in Australia. You can go through the public system, but I would prefer to go through the private system. So, I'm willing to pay for it. But my private health cover went from $40 a fortnight to $98 a fortnight. So, it
Wow.
more than doubled. And you have to hold that cover for 12 months before you can even use it. So, yeah, you've got to think about, oh gosh, am I really willing to spend all that money just for the private health? So that's one aspect of many aspects that you have to think about when you are planning on having a family. But yeah, in terms of making sure we have a big enough buffer, we've doubled the size of our emergency fund just to make sure that we are covered for 12 to 18 months of expenses instead of 3 to 6.
Amazing. And are you happy to share that amount?
Yeah, so we've got, well, it's kind of a bit difficult to split it all out because we are saving for a second house. So we're trying to get about 120,000 for the house and for the emergency fund. So we'll probably have about 35, 40 grand in the emergency fund. And that's way larger than most people would think that,
that's
that they need
phenomenal.
an emergency fund. Yeah. But I think just for us, you know, having that flexibility and that extra money there is just worth the peace of mind for us. You don't have to go that extraordinary. We have a lot of expenses that you don't have to have, like, we have Foxtel and probably have about 4 or 5 streaming services that we pay for our family. So
but that's your choice, and like everyone has different lifestyle, and if that's something that you've accounted for and budgeted for, then that's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And so for everybody who is looking at starting just a basic emergency fund, it's recommended that your emergency fund consists of between 3 and 6 months of your expenses. So, you know, all your things like electricity rates, mortgage payments, and all your other loan payments. And then, of course, anything else that you do pay for on a regular basis as a bill. But yeah, for us, we just came up with that figure and that's what we were happy with. So yeah, that's what we are working towards. And in terms of buying a second property, that plan has gone very south very quickly because of the current market. It's just absolutely insane. We contemplated selling our current unit that we live in, but the area that we live in, the growth prospect for us in terms of rental yield and rental returns were just too high for us to forego. So we'll just wait a little longer until things start to settle down if they do. Otherwise, we'll reassess and go from there.
Yeah, it's hard. You never know like what the market's going to do. I've been looking around and just everything I'm looking at is literally sold within a few days. It's just absolutely mental. What about your wedding? Is that costing you a bit, or are you going quite frugal?
Yeah, I can't wait to do a podcast episode on our wedding. I actually have lined up a wedding planner who's not actually my planner because I haven't paid for one, to talk about just in general the cost of weddings and what are some strategies that people can do if they want to pay a heap or not pay so much. I think I'm kind of in the middle of the range. We were going to have a more extravagant ceremony and reception in Toowoomba, so maybe an hour or a bit drive away from Brisbane. But it just turned out to be a bit of a logistical nightmare. So we settled on getting married in a church in Brisbane, and our reception will also be in Brisbane. And it's not too expensive. There are some things that I've sat down and thought, if I don't have this, am I going to be upset about it? Am I going to regret my choice? And if the answer was yes, then I went and did it. So videographer, photographer are probably 2 of the most expensive things that I'm paying for the wedding, but they're the memories that you get to relive. Things like invitations, did all the invitations myself. I went and bought a cricket. I'm not sure if you can see it in the background.
Yeah.
I did go and buy a cricket. So I've made my invitations with them. For my hens party, which I'll also share, but maybe on a different channel, what I've done for gifts for them, I made everything myself with the cricket. And whilst the machine is quite expensive, it saved me double the amount that I've paid for the machine easily. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff that you can DIY for your wedding. And there's things that you don't have to have just because they're, the norm. It doesn't mean that you have to have it. So there's a whole range of options that you can go for your wedding. To give you a figure, I think my reception is about just under 20. Wow. And everything else is probably another 10 or 15 with the honeymoon included. So yeah, it's really expensive. And as I said, ours is middle of the road. It's nowhere near what it could have been. There's also there's things that just come up, like our flowers. Like, oh my gosh, flowers are so expensive. I did not realize. And you try and send a whole heap of asks for quotes off, and they'll all come back, and one will be here and one will be here, and then it's very time consuming because you got to go through and look at all their work and whether you're happy with it. It's not just
a part-time job, hey?
Exactly. So yeah, but
and maybe that's where the wedding planner comes in, is some people just don't have the time or just don't want the stress of it. So I guess it's weighing up what's more valuable to you. Do you have the time to invest, or is it better to just pay someone to do it? And I think there's merits for both, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, so there's some other things too that we've sort of saved, like the areas that we've saved money on. So our cars, because nobody sees you get out of the car or get in the car or anything else, unless you want pictures with the car, then go ahead, or cars are your thing, go ahead and buy them. But for us, we're like, no, it's not, completely pointless for us. So we actually hired our cars through Hertz, and our family members will drive them. So they're still nice cars. They're Audis. They're really nice cars. But I think it cost about $600 for the 2 cars for 3 days, and it would have cost us $2,000 for 2 cars for 2 hours. So yeah, it's all about weighing up what you want and what's valuable to you, and then I guess spending whatever time you feel is right, getting as many quotes as you can, and then having a look and seeing what you would prefer to do.
Have you seen that new show on Netflix, Marriage or Mortgage?
I have heard about that, but 100% I'm choosing the house.
Yeah, I don't know why anyone would choose not the house. It builds me, but I guess that shows like our finance background, where we're like, house that you have forever or wedding that you have for one day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's wild. So thanks so much for coming on to chat with us today. I'm just going to ask you one final thing, and that would be, what is your advice, for someone that's just starting out on their money journey and they're just so freaking overwhelmed and they just feel like they're never going to be able to get to their money goals?
Yeah, so I think the first thing that you need to understand is that for your money to work hard for you, you need to live within your means. So if you are one of those people that constantly live from week to week, have a look at your budget and see what you're spending so much money on. Go through your card statements or your bank statements and have a look at what you are spending all of your money on, and then find some categories where you can cut back. So some people choose to take their food to work with them. Some people choose to cut out takeaway or fast food. Deliveries is really easy to do now, so cut that sort of stuff out. But yeah, it's totally up to you what you want to cut out. But yeah, I would definitely, the biggest thing is to live within your means. Have a look at your budget, redo your budget all the time. Your budgets shouldn't last you more than a month. You should go and have a look, readjust, and then go again. And that also keeps you motivated because you're not looking at the same numbers all the time. And, there are some times where weekends you'll spend more than others. So my hens is this weekend, and I know I'm going to spend probably 5 times as much as I spent last weekend, but that's okay because I've budgeted for it. Yeah. So yeah, it's really, it needs to be agile. It needs to keep moving and it needs to change all the time. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Live within your means.
Yeah, live within your means and like give yourself grace. Like, don't deprive yourself of like your best friend's birthday weekend or something just because you really want to hit your goal. Like, you still got to live life in the meantime, right?
Yeah, that was a really good point that you brought up on your burnout episode that I was listening to about giving yourself grace. It's a really good point. And I think some of us get to that point where it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this anymore, because you push yourself so hard to work towards these goals, but you are doing so well. Just, it's okay to, have some times where, okay, maybe you did go out of your budget, but have a think about it. What did you do that made you go out of your budget? And I'm sure the reasoning is fine. Just readjust and live within your means.
It's all about progress, not perfection, right?
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And where can people find you if they want to see and know a bit more about you?
Yeah, no worries. Thank you so much for having me on. You can find me on most major podcasting platforms. So the podcast is called Money Made Simple. We also have an Instagram page, which is at moneymadesimple.au. And we have a website, which is moneymadesimple.net.au. And we have heaps of free materials on there. So go and check them out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So that's a wrap. If you loved today's episode, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and let us know why you loved it.
And if you know someone who needs to hear this, then send it their way and share it to your stories, tagging us at Time Money Mastery.
Feel like you're wanting just a little more? Jump on over to our Facebook community. You can find the link in the show notes.
That's all from us today, fam. We'll see you soon.